ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Pranam to all the participants. We welcome to all the participants to our IKS-TKDL Workshop 8 on intellectual property and people's rights. So today we start with our session. Our sir, Murthy sir, will take today's session. Before that, we just let you know about the structure of our IKS-TKDL Workshop this time. This time we will have 5 main sessions from today to Friday. Each session will have 50 minutes lecture that will be followed by 10-minute assessment, short assessment, and then you will have Q&A session for 30 minutes. So after that, the next week, the next Monday, we'll have the final assessment sessions, 50 minutes. That will be preceded by concluding session by our madam, Dr. Satyagiri madam. Then this time we have included 2 interactive sessions on 25th and 26th of August to discuss about the future scope of IKS-TKDL workshop, and we will resolve the questions, doubts according to the feedback which we will receive from our participants. That is the main structure, and we'd like to inform some important information regarding this workshop. We request all the participants, please watch our session carefully and complete the assessment text after each session. That is mandatory, and you have to score 75% to get a certificate of merit. So only qualified candidates will receive assessment certificate issued by our IKS division and TKDL unit jointly. And for assessment link, that will be uploaded in the Google Drive also. So you will receive through our chat and Google Drive assessment link. So due to the limitation in WebEx, only first 1,000 participants can join this via, and then others are requested to watch our live streaming on IKS_media_MOE, and I will upload the assessment link after that. And every recording, PPTs, everything will be uploaded in the Google Drive, which you have received through your mail. So I request sir to start your session. Sir will talk about the fundamentals of IKS. What is the framework we are using for IKS research? What is the goal and objectives, and the importance of IKS in changing world? So what do you say, Pranam?
Dhanyavad, Piyush. So let me share my screen. And I hope my screen is visible to all of you.
Yes.
Are you seeing the slides change?
Yes, sir.
Okay, wonderful. Namaste everyone. Matubhyo Namaha, Pitrubhyo Namaha, Gurubhyo Namaha, Sabhayai Namaha, Sabhapatibhyascha Namo Namaha. Very good afternoon, warm good afternoon to all of you, and namaste to everyone. And today we'll start off this basically the TKDL workshop with basically an overview of what is this Indian knowledge systems that we talk about, and then relevance and importance of this in a changing world. And let's see. So when we talk about any of these things, one of the things that you should, I mean, we want the questions that come to your mind or anybody's mind is that what is IKS? Why is it relevant today? How should we teach IKS and how will it help our students, our nation, and the world at large? And I come from IIT Indore, which is basically in the Malwa Plateau of our country. And here is where, from this region comes the Mahakavi Kalidasa. So I'm going to quote him from Malavika Agnimitram, which is a Nataka that he wrote, in which he says, Puranamityeva nasadhu sarvam nachapi kavyam navamityavadyam santah pariksham tyatarad bhajante mudah parapratyayadeye buddhi. What this basically says, just because something is old, Puranam ityeva nasadhu sarvam, it does not become gold. Nachapi kavyam navamityavadyam. Just because something is new, you should not discard it or look at it in a very disparaging way. He says, Santah pariksham yatarad bhajante. The Santah, the wise people, will praise something only after examining it for its merits. Whereas the mudha, the fools, will be led by the opinions of others. Parapratyaineya buddhihi. So essentially, when we look at IKS, we should not be proud of IKS just because it is old. Similarly, we should not discard Similarly, we should not discard something that is new just because it is new. So the old adage of old is gold that is there in English is something that we should discard. And we should really look into IKS as something that and examine it for its merits and whatever is its relevance today. Therefore, we have to look at it from a very dispassionate view and not just say because it was done in India some 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, it is good and we'll use it. No, we'll have to question everything and then look at it. It is with that kind of a critical reverence that we approach what we are talking about as Indian knowledge systems. So this is the view of Mahakavi Kalidasa. So this is the view that we will follow. This is the tradition of Indian knowledge systems. Now, let's see, why is it relevant today? Now we are talking about Vikasit Bharat in another 23 years now, in fact, 22 years now, by 2047. And then we are very happy that we have this demographic dividend where we have most of the youth will be in 60% of our population will be in the range of 15 to 54 years and things like that. So all of that is very, very nice. But then if you look at the world, the population of the world is going to increase from 7.5 billions to 10 billion people. We are already seeing shrinking resources, whether we talk about water, fresh water availability, whether we talk about mineral resources, whether we talk about food resources, and the population is increasing. So, and then we are living on a small planet. And Carl Sagan says it's a speck of pale blue dot, speck of dust in the vast universe. It is on which that we are living. And then when you think about the vastness of the universe and then where we are living and the limited amount of resources that are available to us, the existential challenges that this world is facing become very, very apparent. How are we going to feed this world? Feed the population of this world? How are we going to produce enough food, fiber, feed, material resources so that we all can live without exhausting this entire world and also thrive with nature? This is where we need to really come up with basically transdisciplinary approaches. And what is that? Essentially, we should right now we have been trying to address all of these issues, whether it be in the economics, whether it be in the health sciences, whether it is in the food production, agriculture, all of these things we have been grappling around like these six blind men from the Panchatantra story. And then what happens there? Because I mean, everybody is trying to look at their own disciplines and then trying to come up with solutions. And we are essentially stuck with these existential problems without any good solutions. And therefore, we have to come up with new solutions. But then again, Panchatantra also warns us, like the lion makers, we should not be creating bigger problems than what we are trying to solve. Therefore, this is where the wisdom of Indian knowledge systems can help us. So then it comes into what is this Indian knowledge system that we are talking about? Is it so knowledge is knowledge, right? Why should it be Indian? Why should we add the adjective Indian to this? Many of you also basically think about this thing, right? I mean, when we talk about Indian mathematics, Bharatiya Ganita. So, अरे mathematics में Indian क्या होता है? What is Indian about mathematics? 2 + 2 is 4. केमिस्ट्री में भारतीय रसायन शास्त्र क्यों होता है? भारतीय क्यों है? What is भारतीय about it? What is Indianness about knowledge systems? This is a question we all have. And is it that unique that only Indians had this? Nobody else in the world had this? Is it something that we should be feeling like the racist supremacists? We should be feeling supremacist about Indian? No, not really about that. Every civilization had its knowledge system. If you look at how a knowledge system develops, it basically, you see, civilizations have developed in a particular geographical area of the world. So, for example, in the Indian Bharata Varsha, what we call as in the entire Indian subcontinent, this is where the Bharatiya civilization developed, the Indian civilization developed. Similarly, we have the Mesopotamia, where the Mesopotamian civilization developed. And then that was the root of all the Judeo-Abrahamic traditions that went to the West. And then in Greek and Roman civilization, they also developed. Similarly, in China, the Chinese civilization developed in the Yangtze and all of those rivers there. Similarly, if you look into the Northern Europe, the Nordic, all of those people, pagans, they all developed there. Similarly, cultures in the Native American cultures, Aborigines culture of Australia, they all developed their own understanding of the world, their own developed their knowledge systems. Similarly, India also had their own knowledge system. Then if you look at what makes a knowledge system in Indian or a Greek or Australian or Chinese or things like that, then you see every civilization, as we said, developed in a particular geographical area. So there you'll see ultimately what is a knowledge about. We are talking about something at a very fundamental level, relationship between a person, and then that person thinks that I that is there, and then we start thinking about what is this relationship between me and the immediate surroundings, that is my body, then my family, then my village. Then we start thinking about what is it with respect to our state, relationship with respect to state, with respect to the nation, with respect to this world, with respect to the nature, with respect to the cosmos. Essentially, that is the quest that we all have. And that we have basically gotten that based on the practical experiences that we have. So this is essentially the Vijnana that we talk about, the interactions that we have with our environment, and then what do we understand from them. For example, in India, in Bharata, you all know that there is right now in all parts of Bharat, there is monsoons. There are rains that are coming up. And then just before this, we know that we all experienced a huge, very hot, intense summer. And then we know that after this, we'll have the Sharad Rutu, and then after that, we'll get a winter as well. And we know that this will follow every year. We see this cyclical nature of the nature. Seasons are cyclical. We see this one. This is what we have observed. That is the Vijnana. And from that, we form a mental model of how this environment works, how we work in this country. Essentially, the jnana is that mental model that we have. That is, there is a cyclical nature of the seasons. The seasons are cyclical. And then from that, and then the other interactions that we have, we form the philosophy of life itself, the Jivana Darshana. So essentially, the practical experiences inform us, and then we form the mental models, which are the jnana, and then from the jnana, we have the life perspective itself, which is Jivana Darshana. And then from that Jivana Darshana comes back again the models jnana, and then that comes into the practices, whether it is in education, arts, administration, law, justice, health, manufacturing, commerce. All of these things are informed with perspective. And so you see this relationship between the vijnana, jnana, and the jivana darshana is a two-way relationship. There is a one way that goes up to Jivana Darshana, and then it flows down to the practices as well. And this does not happen in a year or two. It happens over generations and generations of civilization. And that is what makes a civilization unique. So all the experiences of Indians over last so many thousands and thousands of years is what makes this experience of the triad of Vijnana, Jnana, and Jivana Darshan of Indians unique. And this is what makes this knowledge system Indian or Bharatiya. That Jivana Darshana, Jnana, and the Vijnana. Now you see, once you have this triad, this will be unique for India. This will be unique for Greeks as well. This will be unique for the Chinese civilization. This is why we use that adjective Indian or the Bharatiya before the Jnana Parampara or the knowledge systems. Now you see these three triads. Now when you look at it, how is this coming into practice actually? So all of these things have come from deep experience, observations, experimentation, and rigorous analysis. So when you look into any particular field, let's say you take about health, whether you take about economics, then it becomes the drishti. The core fundamental philosophy of the discipline is the drishti, which makes it Bharatiya. And then this jnana, which is the mental models or the knowledge that is accumulated, distilled from the vijnana and the jivana darshana, inspired with the jivana darshana, becomes the parampara or the tradition of continuous transmission of knowledge. And that can take any form. It is not limited to the textual forms. It can be oral forms, it can be artistic form, it can be the way that we have rituals, it can be anything that we do. So all of these things through which the civilizational ethos is transmitted is essentially called jnana parampara. And then all of these things are not just for fun. They all have a prayojana, or what we call as a practical utility to solve the issues of the society. And then, therefore, when we look at Indian knowledge systems, we are looking at it even today. When we want to talk about Indian knowledge systems, we'll be seeing what is the benchmark which will we use. We will use to see whether this knowledge system is useful to solve the current and emerging problems, not just of India, but of the world. And that is where we will look at this, how we will look at this knowledge system. And why do we want to invest and look into the Indian knowledge system? Because there are the genuine scholars who actually have done this thing are very, very limited. So otherwise, what it leads to is all kinds of myths and unscientific claims. For example, there may be people who will say there is string theory that is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And if you look at, if you ask them where is it mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, they will quote the seventh shloka of seventh chapter. Will say, Mattah parataram nasti kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvamidam protam sutre madigana iva. Sutra is string. Therefore, they will translate that into string theory. And then they say, see, Bhagavan has mentioned a string. Therefore, string theory is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. No, that is not correct at all. Bhagavad Gita in that instance is not talking about string theory. This I say as somebody who has firm belief in Bhagavad Gita. It is a nonsense to claim that there is string theory in Bhagavad Gita. But then on the other hand, you will have other people who will say Indian science is a myth. Indians did not know anything at all. Math was not rigorous. We did not have a concept of proof. Whatever Indians learned, they learned it from outsiders. I mean, that is also a stupid characterization of the Indian civilization. We know as academicians that none of these extreme positions are true. And we have to take up a very good academic position to see what is really the truth, sift the garbage, and then make sure that we retain the essence and what is really true Indian knowledge system. What does the tradition say about Indian knowledge system says about itself? So therefore, there is a critical need for scholars to take leadership in this. And then to research the scientific and technological heritage of India. And then NEP also places great emphasis on multidisciplinary, multilinguistic learning. So NEP says the rich heritage of ancient and eternal Indian knowledge and thought has been the guiding light for this policy. And if you look at it, it talks about it in multiple places, in many, many things, whether it is in curricular integration, multidisciplinary skilling, professional education, promotion of Indian languages, quality of academic research. All of these places, it talks about Indian knowledge systems in a quite effective, deeply. I mean, it talks about it in quite exhaustively there. So this, I come back to that parampara again, because we are talking about scholars here and things like that. So we have to really discuss about what is this parampara that we were discussing about. So whenever we talk about, so again, parampara also has three components. So parampara, jnana parampara will have the very first component, which is basically about the maintaining the flow of the knowledge, will have the preservation as a big part. And when we talk of preservation, immediately people will jump and say, oh yeah, we have to take care of all the manuscripts, digitize them, put it in the latest format and all of that, which is true, which is correct, which is good. We have to do that. But in addition to that, that is not sufficient. As in mathematics, we say, right? It is a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition. It is a necessary condition. We have to preserve our manuscripts and everything, but that is not sufficient. For that, we have to preserve what we call as the IKS drishti or the Bharatiya drishti. And that is very important when we talk of preservation. And then we have to adapt the basic, then transmit this knowledge to the next generation. think of a river that flows, right? A river that is flowing will connect the past and the future through the present. And that's essentially like a flowing water. And that is essentially what we are doing right now. We are connecting the past to the future through our education, teaching methods, all of these things. We are passing this knowledge to the next generation. Therefore, whenever we are trying to transmit this knowledge, the strategies that we use, the way that we use has to adapt to the times. So we cannot say maybe 500 years ago or even 200-300 years ago they used to sit under a tree and then learn. Therefore, we'll all go sit under a tree, do learn like this, learn. That's not how things work today. We are right now we are connected to more than 550 people here. I just saw that number through internet, and you're all sitting in your offices, and then we are trying to take these things forward. So that's how we should be thinking about doing things. So that is a transmission, and we have to really look at how we can take these things forward, right, and adapt the new technologies and everything so that the information, the drishti is passed on. And finally, the third component of parampara, just like as it is important to preserve and transmit, it is also important to create new knowledge. Therefore, whenever we want to talk about Indian knowledge systems, we have to talk about new innovations, new research, new discoveries, because knowledge creation is continuous in IKS. And therefore, whenever we talk about IKS, we are not talking about history studies here. This is not a history subject. This is a continuously evolving subject like mathematics and science. And IKS is not limited to Vedas or Upanishads and Puranas or Hindu studies. This encompasses every tradition that has arisen in Bharat and then is part of Bharat. So how do we really look into this is essentially something that we need to be really maintaining. Okay, so that the parampara is maintained. Now let's see what is this Bharatiya Drishti I'm talking about. Essentially, if you look at the Bharatiya Drishti, it talks about few elements that are there. For example, anything that we look at 3 levels of reality. Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika, and Adhyatmika levels. And then there are 4 goals of life that we talk about. Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And those can be divided into aparadharma and paradharma. And then there are 4 ashramas, which are 4 stages of life: brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyasa. These are all elements that make the Bharati Drishti unique, right? And then I want to give you one example. So let's say in few more days we are going to celebrate Onam, right? Which is, you all know, as a festival from Kerala. So what is, if you look at Onam and ask this question, what makes Onam Onam? So in Onam, there is all this Vilikku, there is lighting of the lamp there, and then there is entire puja of Bali, and basically also Upendra or Vamana puja is done. And then there is also the Sadhya, that is the food, the wonderful culinary delicacies of Kerala come out in the Sadhya. And then there is all these dances and everything that come out. I mean, all the people, Kathakali, Mohiniyattam, all of these performances are done. And then there are wonderful snake boat races that happen. All of these things happen around Onam, in the Onam, during the Onam celebrations. Now, if I ask what makes Onam Onam, is it just the sadhya? Is it just the food? Is it just the snake boat race? Is it just the dances? Is it just the lamp that is there? All of these things are very important for us. But what makes Onam Onam? It is a drishti. It is a perspective with which we approach the celebration. So let me give you a very concrete example. So let's say there is a rope that I have put in a corner. There is a corridor in my family, in the home, and then I just put this rope there. I have put this rope, and then somebody, a stranger, comes from outside, and because that corridor is dimly lit, there is not enough light. He mistakes it for a snake. So the stranger mistakes the rope that I have put there for a snake, right? Now, what if you go and ask that stranger who has come in and then say, what do you see there? What are you seeing there? He will say, I'm seeing a poisonous snake. I'm seeing a deadly snake. I'm seeing something that is very harmful. These are the adjectives that he will basically use to describe. The stranger will use to describe because he is seeing a snake. But I know that I have put a rope. Now, if you come and ask me and then say, oh, you see that stranger, that fellow who has come from outside, he is saying that that is a snake, and it is a very poisonous snake. It is a very fearful snake. You have to fear it. It's a, and then fearsome snake, and it's very dangerous one. Then if I say, no, 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 that is not a dangerous snake. It is a vegetarian snake. It is a pet snake. It does not have any poison. It is harmless. All of these things. Do you think it is correct? That makes no sense, absolutely, right? What should I be saying? I should be saying, no, it is not snake at all. It is a rope that I have put, right? And then suddenly all of these adjectives of Visha, Krura, Bhayanaka, all of those will drop off. Suddenly you'll see the rope for what it is. It is a rope. Now you see, you may say, oh yeah, this is example is good, but then is it relevant? Right? You see this picture here. What do you see here? This would have worked very well in a open classroom setting, but you see, even online it can work well. If you see, what do you see there? Most likely you are seeing a group of nuns, European nuns, dancing around, and there is some nun who's black, standing on a pedestal, holding some kind of a frond and a book in her hand. And then there is another nun going and giving some kind of a sweets in a box to the nun who is standing on the pedestal, black one. And then all these nuns dancing around are white. The one on the pedestal is a black one, like black nun. This is what you are seeing there, right? Do you know what this represents actually? This picture is taken from this picture is taken from Marco Polo's travels, which was basically Marco Polo, as you all know, he traveled all around the world, and then known world at that time for him. And then he went back to Europe, and then they started cataloging. I mean, they started writing his travelogue. So there was basically, you see, a travelogue is, you don't want a simple book with only text. So you want some paintings there too. So they hired a French painter who was basically in central France, and then asked him to paint something based on the experiences that Marco Polo was describing. So the picture that you see is the picture of a temple in Malabar in Kerala that this French painter had drawn. Now imagine this. Does this look like a temple at any time? Any from any angle? No. But was the French artist wrong? Marco Polo probably described to him that there are these bunch of women dancing in a very sacred place called temple. So the sacred place for him, for a French painter who had never left France, was a church. So he drew, and then who are the women in church? There would be nuns. So he drew a group of nuns who were dancing. And then he did not know that there would be a pedestal or something, so just drew something that would describe the basically the whatever the description that Marco Polo gave him. But what do you think Marco Polo would have seen actually? Probably he would have seen something like this. In a temple, there is Mohiniyattam going because this is Malabar. So there are a group of women dancing, and then there is all kinds of offering to the goddess Devi, Bhadrakali, or something like that. That was what was happening. And now you see the problem there. So the rope that I was describing is the picture on our left, which is a Mohini Attam in a temple. And the stranger coming and seeing a snake is the picture to your right, which is a bunch of nuns dancing around this thing. And if I try to describe temple in terms of the picture on the right, it will all be wrong because that does not have Bharatiya Drishti. It has a European Drishti. See, this is the challenge. Whenever we talk about Indian knowledge systems, we have to bring in Bharatiya Drishti, or the Indian perspective of thinking and looking at things. And this is not a theoretical concern. This is a practical concern too. This fellow on the left there was a colonial arrogant fellow called James Stuart Mill. He wrote 6 volumes of the history of British India, and he wrote all of this thing without ever stepping in India. Now you think the problem. He will be like this, worse than this French painter, because this fellow justifies why he is better than Indians, understanding India. And unfortunately, this book, The History of British India, is still on the curriculums of history programs in our country. Now that needs to be changed. That is why we need IKS. We need to tell our story of India through the experiences of Indians, not through the experience of Europeans or foreigners. This is why we need IKS. And then now you come back to this and then ask this question: what makes Onam Onam? What would have the French painter drawn, right? What would have French painter described about Onam if he did not ever step into India, right? This is what is important, why we want to do this. And then when you look into that is a Bharati Drishti that is important. And then when we talk about the Indian knowledge systems, basically Indian knowledge systems provides a unique perspective. It is holistic and rigorous and innovative in its approach. So let me show you a few examples. So we talk about economics all the time, right? So there is this capitalism model which says profit maximization and only profit maximization. So essentially, if I have to say that in Indian, in our Bharatiya this thing perspective, it is Shuddha Labh, pure profit maximization. But only profit maximization will lead to exploitation of humans and resource nature. Because you're not looking at humans as humans, you're looking at them as human resources, natural resources to be exploited. Now, that will also lead to pseudo democracies. We are seeing what is happening in US and all the Western countries now. Now, what was the reaction of the society, capitalist society, to the capitalism? If you look at Karl Marx, he wrote his that Das Kapital book in London at the height of its capitalistic glory, because then he saw that a lot of workers were exploited. And then he said, no, this Shuddha Labh is not a good concept. Shunya Labh is a better concept. Communism. What is Shunya Labh? No profit. No, everything will be communalized, everything will be under the state, and everything will be distributed equally. In theory, sounds very good. But then it will stifle the innovation and entrepreneurship because humans work for incentive. And if you take that incentive away, nobody is going to work. And everybody, you will see the failure of these systems. And we've seen that in USSR, North Korea, Cuba, we have seen Venezuela. I mean, all these places also lead to dictatorships. And then exploitation of nature and humans also happen in these places. So this is what the Shuddha Labh and Shunya Labh of the world were. What was Bharat's model of economics? Because we were 25% of world's GDP for about 1.5 millennia, 1500 years. That's not possible without a good model of economics. So now if you see, we have what is called as a Shubha Labha concept. You see this even today in the door panels that we decorate, Shubha Labh. What is that? Yes, of course, labh is necessary. Labh for me, profit for me is necessary. But at the same time, I'm talking about the Shubha or the welfare of everybody, myself, my customers, my consumers, my suppliers, the nature, everything for everybody, there should be Shubha. Sabka Shubha hona chahiye aur mera labh hona chahiye. This is the Bharatiya way of economics. And now suddenly you bring in this concept of dharma. Ye mera dharma hai. So suddenly you cannot exploit anybody because you know adharma hoga. And then this basically acts as a check on that unbridled profit motive of capitalism and also the negation of wealth creation in which communism operates. So you see, there will be ये होगा, you have to go out and work hard, but then don't keep everything for yourself. Just enjoy. And this is what again is reflected in the Ishavasya Upanishad's very first shloka. It says, Ishavasyamidam sarvam yatkinch jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjitha magrudah kasvasiddhanam. ये बोलते हैं ईशावास्य उपनिषद में कि सब चीजों का भोग करो लेकिन त्याग पूर्वक भोग करो और किसी के संपदा का उसको ये मत करना, कोवट मत करना. And this is something that has been told. This is the Bharatiya model of economics. Now again, look at a personal level. Now if you look at everything, in fact I was looking at some article recently. They said that a child before he or she gets to the age of 3 is hit by more than 100,000 advertisements targeted at them. Essentially, we are encouraging a consumption based economy. We are saying that if you consume more, you become happy. Because consumption, whether it is a bigger paycheck, bigger salary, bigger car, bigger house, is all essentially supposed to lead us to happiness. All of these are indirect measures of happiness. It will lead to consumption based economics, will lead to exploitation of nature, unlimited growth, and societal discord because nature is not equitable. There are always people who will have more capability, lower capability, and it is this thing of the society, civilized society, to take care of everyone. So you don't want this societal discord will come up in any consumption-based environments. And then what was the Bharat's model? It was Ananda, pursuit of Ananda. So therefore, we talk about thriving with nature, growth that meets the needs of all, societal harmony. This is a much better model for essentially having. This is a much better model for having complete growth for the world, sustainable growth, not just sustainable growth, but a resilient, thriving growth with the nature for the world. And even in healthcare, we have the similar issues. We talk about allopathy, which talks about disease-centric thing, treatment of disease. Therefore, healthcare becomes individual responsibility. And then it also becomes expensive healthcare, right? Because it's expensive. And then what does Ayurveda or Siddha medicine talk about? It says swasthya, pursuit of swasthya. Basically makes, it says that you have to protect the health of the healthy first. Then you talk about treating the diseases. Then therefore healthcare becomes the responsibility of the society, and it also lead to affordable personalized medicine. If you look at the some of the traditions in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, there are in the border of Tamil Nadu and Kerala, there is a village where the doctors are paid only if everybody in the family stays healthy, and whereas they are not paid if anybody in the family gets sick. This is what something that they talk. I mean, that's how they do, because a doctor's job is to keep you all healthy. Now, the modern healthcare, it's exactly the opposite. Doctor gets rich if we are getting diseases. So, Ayurveda, Siddha, which talks about the systemic approaches of Tridosha concept based on the Vata, Pitta, Kapha, systemic approaches, is something that is a very different approach compared to the reductionist paradigm of allopathy. And therefore, I think that I was able to provide you a little bit information about what makes this Bharati Drishti unique. What makes this approach unique to disciplines like healthcare, economics, environmentalism, all of these things? Communication. I have not shown you examples of communication, but then you can actually talk about every discipline like this and then look into it. And then if you look into the multidisciplinary nature of Indian knowledge systems, for example, I mean, agriculture and trade were very, very important foundations of the Indian society. If you look into the Chola Empire, basically the range of Chola Empire was all the way up to the Cambodia and Vietnam. And they had basically the first naval expedition to the Indonesia and won the things there, and then influenced the society there like anything. Similarly, on the west coast, you have traders going all the way directly across the oceans from Gujarat and Kerala coast to Zanzibar near Mozambique. That's how we were traveling. We were not like Greeks doing island hopping. We would travel in the open oceans. We had some of the outposts in Oman and Middle East countries from millennia, several millennia. And we used to go around the Gulf of Eden to all the way up to the Red Sea and all of those places. How did we do all of that for this? And then if you look into just agriculture, you need a productive society for that. And this is a painting from Bhimbhetka, which are caves here in Madhya Pradesh, more than 35,000 years. Some of them are 100,000 years. And then confirmed evidence of agriculture from archaeological evidence goes to at least 1,000 years before present. In fact, recently, even in Tamil Nadu, Keeladi, and all those places in near Tirunelveli are showing evidence of this as far as 6,000, 7,000 BCE. And what were the crops that we domesticated? The wheat and barley were the first crops that we domesticated in the tier one. Then came this other crops like ragi, tuar dal, chana dal, linseed, cotton. All of these things were domesticated in India. Then the tier three, last toward the end, maybe 4,000, 5,000 years ago. That's how old we are. That is the latest crop that we domesticated, was about 5,000 years, 4,000 years ago, was the rice. And then if you look into agriculture, what is necessary for agriculture, you need water. Water is very, very important. And therefore, the importance of water was recognized very early. The Agnirve, Dhumo, Jaire, Dhumat, Abramaha, Abrat, Vrushti, is from Shatabata Brahmana, Shukla Yajurveda. So the heat creates the vapors, and then vapor creates the clouds, and then cloud gives the rain. And then rainfall was considered Purva Chitti, or prior wisdom in Vedas. Then the weather, water, and agriculture in India were intertwined. Rishi Kashyapa, Parashara, Gautama, Vatsa, Agastya, they were all well known for the rainfall prediction methods. The Krishi Parashara discusses the long term and short term predictions. And then Varaha Mihira and Brihat Samhita discusses Garbhottama. Garbhottama concept is something that is even today used very extensively in Tamil Nadu. And there they use this concept to predict the rainfall 7 to 8 months later. And fascinating way in which all of these things are done. And all of these traditions now are basically being reaffirmed by modern scientific evidence. Now we are seeing that these are not mumbo jumbo, they actually have some basis in the real world, this thing, empirical evidences. So these are nothing like, but like machine learning models that were built by the society over hundreds of years, if you will. And there are many methods there. Like, for example, this is a Krishi Parashara method where you take the Shaka year multiplied by 3, add 2, and divide by 7, find the remainder, and then you get the year of the ruling planet. And then you actually can get the Adhakas, which has basically 1.6 centimeters of rainfall, so on and so forth. And Brihat Samhita talks about all of these different methods. And then there is also in Tamil Nadu, there is a 60-year cycle for years. And then those 60 years, there is a specific crop that is supposed to be grown for each year. There are crop specifications for every year. And all of these actually are related to the expected monsoon rainfall in that place, right? So these are all kind of things. And then it also talks about ethical treatment of animals. So in fact, you must have heard about this ahimsa paramo dharma that actually occurs in the context of ethical treatment of animals from the Mahabharata's Anushasana Parva. Ahimsa paramo dharmas tatha ahimsa paro dhamah ahimsa paramam dhanam ahimsa paramam tapah. And then Krishi Parashara also says that don't trouble your oxen and animals, farm animals, and then try to get more yields. All of those things will be lost. And then Kautilya talks about Arthashastra. And then in that one, he talks about protecting both the wild animals and domesticated animals. The hunting of wild animals for the sake of entertainment was strictly forbidden in India. Strict punishments were given to those who cause intentional harm to animals, right? Yeah. And then health and wellness, the Korak, Hitabhuk, Mitabhuk, Rutubhuk. This is something that we have discussed earlier. Korak means who is healthy. Ko Aruk, who is healthy. Korak. It means Hitabhuk, Mitabhuk, Rutubhuk. The response is who stays healthy, who stays healthy, who stays healthy. The answer is Hitabhuk, one who eats what is good for the body. Hitabhuk. Mita Bhuk. Bhuk means to eat. Mita means moderate quantities. One who eats moderate quantities. Mita Bhuk. And then finally, Rutu Bhuk. Rutu Bhuk means somebody who eats according to the season. So the principles of healthy living tied to the food are right there. Koruk. Who stays healthy? Who stays healthy? Who stays healthy? Hitabhuk, Mitabhuk, Rutubhuk. Right? Okay, and then this is essentially now the entire Indian knowledge systems. I hope have covered enough to show you the Jivana Darshana, Jnana, Vijnana, and then the Drushti, Parampara, and Laukika Prayojana for few disciplines. Now, let's say, where do we find this knowledge? Right? I mean, you can classify it as literary and non-literary sources, whether it is in the dharmic tradition, Sanatana dharmic tradition, oral traditions. In fact, the oral traditions of our country have such a big repository of knowledge that the textual traditions are probably 5 to 10%. That's all. Rest of it is in the society through oral tradition, arts, dance forms, music, lok all of these things. And in fact, you know, the Tamil letters, this thing, it starts with Aram, Atichudu. I mean, the brilliant way in which they educate the children is really, really fascinating if you look at it. And then types of sources, primary sources, translated primary sources, secondary sources. Primary sources are the original texts. And then translated primary sources are basically primary sources that have been translated authentically. And then the secondary sources are like commentaries on it and things like that. And somebody writing about Arthashastra, all of these things. Resources, you can have that in manuscripts, books, research, monographs, all of these things. And locations can be in many, many forms. But then we have to recognize that primary sources come in Sutra, which is an aphoristic treatise, like a formula cheat sheet. Bhashya, which is like a commentary. Vartika, which is a text of revisions and rejoinder. Karika, which is a versified technical treatise. Vyakhya is a gloss. These are all the kind of texts that you will have. And if you have to identify a authentic source, you will have to identify a primary source, consult some experts, see if you can find multiple secondary sources in peer-reviewed literature, whether there are any bhashyas, vartikas, karikas, tika, etc., commentaries, translations. Then you get that evidence from multiple sources. That essentially will help you to identify a primary source. Then look at evidence of agriculture as a knowledge system. You can see we talked about all of these different things happening from 8000 BCE to current things, right? The first textbook of agriculture was written in India in about 400 BCE. So 2500 from today. So it's the Krishi Parashara. And then there was another one called Kashyapiya Krishi Sukti, Brahat Samhita. I just indicated a few of these. So Manasollasa, Vishwavallabha in 16th century, Nuskadar Fanni Falahat in Farsi in 17th century by Dara Sikho. Then we had Krishi Gita in Malayalam from Kerala. We had Vrikshayurveda again in Tamil and Odia from 18th and 17th centuries, so on and so forth. We have texts in Meitei language from Manipur on bamboo architecture. All of these things are available. So all of these things point to a wonderful, vibrant tradition of basically texts that are there. And if you go to Bengal, there is something called Khaner Vachan or Dakar Vachan. And these are all the orally transmitted knowledge about the rainfall, cropping patterns, all of these things. You go to Saurashtra, you'll see many of these practices. And all of these things are there. This is essentially what makes the agriculture as a knowledge system. You can see I just listed a few books. I don't want to go through every one of them here, but essentially you can see the range of timelines I'm talking about, right? And so this is essentially the agriculture as a knowledge system. So I showed you one example of agriculture because normally whenever we talk about Indian knowledge systems, we have this preponderance to jump to Ayurveda and yoga, but I wanted to show you something else. So that is why I was trying to show agriculture as a knowledge system. Similar knowledge systems exist in music, dance traditions, sculpting traditions, whether you talk about artistic traditions, any of the art forms, music gharanas, Vyakarana, Chanda Shastra, whether you talk about metallurgy, whether you talk about anything. I mean, any of these traditions you pick up, you'll find a wealth of this knowledge there and traditions that have been kept alive. And then I just want to talk a little bit about Indian Knowledge Systems Division of the Ministry of Education. So this division basically works on all of these things, and our vision is to rejuvenate and mainstream Indian knowledge systems for the contemporary world. And the idea is to decolonize the Indian mind. See, our education, unfortunately, for last 200 years or so, has basically made us like that French painter. And all I want you to do is to look at Bharat as a Bharatiya looks at it. So we have to decolonize our mind and we have to really do this. And for that, we have to have a healthy and critical reverence. We should not accept everything blindly because it is said in the Shastras. We should debate, we should look at it and then go with Shraddha though, and critical reverence for this unbroken traditions of Bharat, so that we are working for the welfare of the world, not just us, but for the welfare of the world. This is where we will become the Vishwaguru. That is how we will become the Vishwaguru. And for this, we are intervening at every stage, whether it is school education, higher education, supporting research scholars through many, many, many initiatives. And all of these things, you can find a lot more information on our website. So I will point you to that, iksindia.org. And then some of the centers may be very close to you. So there are all of these things spread all across India, right? So you can find something somewhere, and you'll find a lot of resources on our website as well. And then course outlines, lecture recordings, lecture notes, reference materials, authentic research materials are all available on our website. You please look at it. And then we routinely conduct faculty development programs in collaboration with UGC. And we always are on the lookout for working with genuine scholars. We respect genuine scholars quite a bit, and we want to work with them whether they are in the academia or whether they are in the outside academia, doesn't matter to us. And our goal is to empower teachers to become acharyas. शिक्षक को आचार्य बनाना है. और आप कैसे काम कर सकते हैं? What can you do? Study the foundational materials in the IKS. Attend faculty trainings. Study primary and secondary texts in your domain. If you are a chemist, study about Indian chemistry. If you are in law, look into what is the basically different concepts of law, whether it is about what is the concept of evidence. You can do a comparative study of Evidence Act and what constitutes evidence as per the Yagyavalkya Smriti or some other Smritis like that. Look at inheritance. All of these things can be done. All of these things can be done whether you are an economist or a mathematician or anybody, civil engineer, architecture. You all can look into your area and understand what is the Bharatiya perspective in it. So develop expertise in your subject area. Discuss with your colleagues and students. Become IKS ambassadors by imbibing IKS Drishti. So Apastamba Dharma Sutra says, Achinoti Shastrarthan Achare Sthapayatyapi Swayamacharate Yasmat Acharyastena Uchyate. This is the Acharya, one who embodies what he or she is preaching. We should become the embodiment of this Bharatiya Drishti in ourselves and then talk about it. Then it carries weight. This is the Bharatiya tradition. And the takeaways are understand, study, and add to the traditional wisdom. It is important that you add to the traditional wisdom also. We are very, very proud that our Bharatiya civilization produced Shushruta, Charaka, Aryabhatta, C.V. Raman, all of these big, big scientists. But then we are not happy with that. IKS division wants to see that we produce more Shushrutas, we produce more Darashikos, we produce more Aryabhattas in this country. That is what we need to be producing. Therefore, IKS is not history studies or limited to religious studies. And it is Drishti that makes it unique, Bharatiya Drishti. And IKS is inherently multidisciplinary and holistic in approach. So whether you go to Tamil Nadu and you see the Karikala Cholan built Kallani Dam or Rani Ki Vav in Patan in Gujarat, see, you can be inspired by any of these anywhere in the country. And with that, I'll say a few things like Mahabharata says, be a garland maker, O king, not like a charcoal burner. We are not striving for unity of that looks like a charcoal. We want to make sure that India blooms like a garland of flowers. Every basically community expressing their own beautiful colors, perfumes, and then essentially making this country a garden of flowers. Garland makers is what we need to become. And then I will have one word, this thing, I will say one shloka that blessings, rather, that Madan Mohana Malviya ji said to his students, a message that he gave. He says, Satyena brahmacharyena vyayamenatha vidyaya teshabhaktyatmatyagena sammanaharaho sadabhava. By truth, by brahmacharya, by vyayama, and your studies with desha bhakti and tyaga, become respectable in this world. With that, I'll thank you so much, and then I'll stop here. Namaste, everyone.
Pranam sir, thank you. Bahu bahu dhanyawad for giving this insightful lecture to show us the
Thank you.
Atma of IKS division,
Namaste.
how we can know about the Drishti. So, thank you, sir, for giving light on that with examples and case studies. So, we have our madam and Anil sir also. Sir, with your permission, can we complete the assessment quickly
Please,
within
please,
10 minutes?
please. Yeah,
Then we can
we'll
come
take
to
10
the
minutes.
question and
Yes.
answer session.
Sure, sure, sure,
Okay.
sure.
Thank
Yeah.
you, sir. So we are sharing assessment link in the chat box. Please complete your assessment within 10 minutes. Then we will discuss your questions and doubts. In between, if you have time, you can put your questions in the chat box after completing your assessment. I am also uploading the same link in the Google folder. which you have received already. Please, we request the participants who are watching live streaming, please open your Google folder and open the link. We have uploaded in the Google folder also. So please complete your assessment. Then we'll come back to the question and answer session. You have another 4 minutes. Please complete your assessment and submit. Namaste. You have another 2 minutes to submit your assessment. Please submit your assessment. We request to the participants who have submitted, please ask your question in the chat box. We'll start the next session, that is question answer session, after 2 minutes. Namaste, pranam to all the participants. So we request you please put your question in the chat box. Otherwise, you can you can raise your digital hand so that we can unmute you. You will ask your question. Please text us or raise your hand. Yes, sir. Pranam.
So somebody asked, what is Bharata Varsha? So Varsha ka arth kya hai? So in ancient times, the Ritu, the season, the sign, the year, Samvatsara used to start with Varsha, Varsha Ritu. That was the mark of essentially the start of the year. And then slowly became that as a mark of year. And then when you look at the entire Indian subcontinent, this is essentially where the Varshas happen. That's essentially one way we look at Bharata Varsha. This is also called Jambu Dvipa because of the Jambu trees and all that are found in this, basically below the Himalayas and things like that. So essentially, Bharata Varsha is the Indian subcontinent in a larger context where the monsoons and the seasonal monsoons happen. This is essentially the what you can think of as a Bharata Varsha. Okay. IKS with technology. Explain the scope of IKS with technology. Definitely. I mean, in fact, most of the people today, in fact, the biggest thrust of IKS division is in the technology domains. Why? Because that is where you can see the Laukika Prayojana very, very easily. And then also it is very apparent that we need much more interventions in the technology field. For example, so if you talk about, if you are a material scientist or a metallurgy scientist or working on mechanical engineer, now we talk about smart materials in a very big way. So how do you make smart materials, smart alloys? So for example, you must have heard about the Aranmula mirror in Kerala, from Kerala, which is essentially a polished mirror made of what we call as high tin bronzes. And then if you go to a little on the other side of the Western Ghats to Tamil Nadu, in the Tanjavur Delta area, you'll see some of the best bronzes made using what is called as a lost wax process, which in India is called Madhu Chishta Vidhi. This is the same process that was used even in Sindhu Saraswati civilization. That dancing girl, that bronze cast thing you saw is basically a lost wax process. So the way that they make these things, and then the way that, because it's not a simple way of just making a wax idol, wax figurine and then trying to replace it with clay and then pour metal into it. It's not that easy. There is a lot of technical questions there, whether how do you design these things so that it cools evenly. There are all kinds of technical issues, and the entire process of making the alloys is very, very challenging because these are all what are called as high entropy alloys. We talk about panchalohas, ashtadhatus. In fact, if you go to the Palani, a Tamil Nadu, town in Tamil Nadu, where we have a statue of Muruga, Lord Muruga, there you'll see that the entire Murthy of Murugan is made of Panchapashanam. Essentially, they are made of 5 poisonous elements. But then, when you actually combine them, the abhisheka that you get, the ghee that you get out of it, is considered to have medicinal properties. And this is something that has, and this was basically cast by Siddha yogis there. And this is essentially the embodiment of all the kind of IKS in technology. That's one area. Let me give you another area. So we all hear about children with a lot of speech difficulties. Now, by using Sanskritam, you actually can treat the autistic children and dyslexic children. because Samskrita Ucharana has very, very specific points, and you actually can cure a lot of these difficulties. That's another in the human, this kind of child, this thing. And also in psychology and all those areas, there are a lot of insights that you can get from the Indian knowledge system that can be helpful. Now, let's talk about foundational engineering in civil, from a civil engineering perspective. Nowadays, what we call as a pile foundation is something that we use to basically construct multi-story buildings so that and prevent the collapse of the basically the deep pits that we dig. There are technologies that we can use from the Indian traditional knowledge systems, Indian knowledge systems, which actually can basically help you dig. I showed you a picture of Rani Ki Vav in my presentation. That essentially how that was constructed is a civil engineering marvel. How did they really construct it so deep without everything falling on top of each other? Another thing is, whenever we talk about waterlogged areas, there one of the biggest challenges that civil engineers have is to keep water out or away from the foundations, because it basically causes what is known as a fluidization of the soil. And because of that, the entire thing can basically collapse. The buildings can collapse. But if you go to Kashi, you'll see a temple there which is actually leaning more than the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and is actually taller than that, and is next to the bank of Ganga. So essentially, the entire soil is saturated with water. Similarly, there is a temple in Shivsagar district, in Shivsagar of Assam, which is in middle of a lake. And entire foundation is, the soil substratum is all flooded with water. And in fact, in India, that was not seen as a problem. That was seen as a design challenge that would actually be useful to prevent the damage from the earthquakes. So many of these buildings are standing because they could withstand earthquakes because there was water in the foundations. And so this is even in the civil engineering. Now there is something called adamantine glues, which are basically called Vajralepa in Brihat Samhita. There are 17 types of Vajralepas described. So these are all organic glues which you can make to seal different materials. It is like our M seal. You can actually make them for various for durability. You can actually tailor the durability to 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, 100 years, so on and so forth. There are a lot of applications like that when we talk about technology applications, right? Yeah. There is Professor Mahadevanji's book on basics of introduction to Indian knowledge systems, published by Prentice Hall of India. That is one book. And then there is also Elements of Indic Knowledge Systems by Professor Mohan Raghavanji and Harsha Simhaji from HTSR Foundation. These two books are very, very good. You may want to start off with them, right? Yeah.
Yes. Sir, one question from Dr. Preeti. What are the areas in management? Can you guide me, sir?
Yeah, of course. Management is really, really a fertile area. Please look into the works of Professor Mahadevanji from IIM Bengaluru. You can look into work of Dr. Ashish Pandey from IIT Bombay, the School of Management there. And there are a lot of things that you can find. In fact, I would also refer you to some of the things from Panchatantra that you can use in management and these things. I will refer to some of the videos that are there on our website by Dr. Bharat Das ji and Dr. Vinayak Rajat Bhatt, where you actually can look into that in a very, very deep way. Management principles, and then even the approach to management itself. What do you really talk about management? And these are all very, very important things that you can do. Particular subject, for example, zoology and chemistry, unfortunately, you'll not find one book where all of these things will be available in one place. They will be spread across many, many things. Just like in a modern chemistry area, you'll not find one book that will be talking about organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry, physical chemistry, all of those things. There are multiple books. Similarly, you'll find the same thing even in IKS also. And then another challenge with the IKS is there is no one-to-one mapping of the subjects that are in the modern era to the ones that are there. For example, the chemistry, the Rasayana Shastra occurs as a discipline in Siddha, Ayurveda, and on its own, and all of these things. So there are books. Of course, there are books like Rasaratna Samuchaya, Rasa Arnava, Rasaratnakara. These are all the texts of chemistry. Similarly, for zoology and all things like that, there is a wonderful book by Hamsadeva from 13th and 14th century. He's a Jain scholar who wrote an entire encyclopedia of animals found in the Bharata. So there are things like that. And then if you are studying BTech in AI, yeah, there is a wonderful book by Professor K. Gopinath. He's a emeritus scientist professor from ISC Bengaluru. The name of the book is The Computational Mean. The Computational Mean, the Indian Approach to Mathematics. And this is written by Professor K. Gopinath from ISC Bengaluru. I would refer you to his work, Pragati ji. Okay. Traditional healing and all that, please go to the Ayush website and you'll find thousands of books on all of that. Politics and IKS, read Panchatantra, please. That is the best book. And it will teach you a lot. Psychology, I would like you to look into many scholars. I mean, in fact, entire Bhagavad Gita is about psychology. And if you look into work of Dr. Vinay Chandra Banavati, Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary ji, they are all working on psychology from an Indian perspective, right? Okay. And food and IKS, yes, Paromita ji, there are two textbooks called Bhojana Kutuhalam and Kshema Kutuhalam, which are books of recipes from 16th and 15th centuries that you can find. And process of metallurgy, smelting and things like that, yes, there are books. Again, please, again, as I said, you'll find them in some of the chemistry books. But much of the knowledge has been destroyed by the Britishers, specifically because the metallurgists of India were so good that they would make swords that would just cut down the British swords, and they were very afraid of it. So they actually killed a lot of artisans who would actually make the swords and all that. Right now, they are in a pitiable situation. They are actually pushed into the forest because they were afraid of Britishers. They would kill them wherever they could find. So they went into the forest for the last 200-300 years, and they are classified as scheduled tribes now. They're in very dire conditions in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and all of these places. They're all are people who used to be the best technologists of India. In the area of neurobiology and neurodegeneration and all that, I would refer you to one of our IKS centers in IIT Mandi, IKSHMA Center for Mental Health and mental health applications. So please take a look at their thing. And also, Nimhans is doing some very good work, right? So please take a look at that.
Yes, one question, sir. How can librarians help in promotion of IKS?
Oh, yes,
Uh,
in many ways. Please make sure that the books on IKS are at the forefront of your library. And then also, basically see that, I mean, see, as librarians, you can promote the Indian Knowledge Systems books among your students who come, and that's primarily what you can do. And by the way, it was a librarian in 1906, Shyama Shastri, Dr. Shyama Shastri from the Mysore Oriental Research Institute, who brought out the very first manuscript of a unknown text which disproved to the world that Indians did not know about politics, did not know about managing economics. Basically, until then, the Chanakya was relegated as an imaginary figure in Indian this thing because of the colonial propaganda. Chanakya was thought to be an imaginary figure. In 1906, Dr. Shyama Shastri ji, he was a librarian who translated the very first copy of Arthashastra. Until then, it was lost. So librarians have a great place to play. So, yeah.
yes. One question. I have been collecting oral traditions in my childhood. From curiosity, how can I connect with IKS division?
What kind of oral traditions are these?
No, it's not mentioned. Please write your Please write clarification regarding the oral tradition. Please. We request all the participants, please put your question in the chat box, so with that we can collect your questions and solve in the last two sessions, that is interactive sessions on 25th and 26th. Please put your questions in the chat box. If it is not answered today, it will be answered again on 25th or 26th. Please. And another regarding PPTs and study materials, everything will be uploaded in the Google Drive which you have received through mail. Please check your Google Drive. It will be uploaded after a few hours. Okay, sir.
Thank you so much.
It's
If you have no
almost
questions, we'll
5.
stop here.
Yes.
Yeah. Namaste. Namaste, Piyush. Namaste, Vishwajanini ji. Namaste, Anil ji. Namaste, everyone.
First. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Astu Pranamaha.
Namaskar,
Pranam to
sir.
all the
Thank you, everyone.
Namaste.
participants.
Thank you, Piyush.
Thank you.
Yes. See you tomorrow. See you.